You get me, get you. You get me, feel it, you. You get me, get you. You get me, feel it, you. You get me, get you.
Hello, welcome. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. Remember the without killing each other part. That's kind of important, right? I'm your host, Corey Nathan. It is an honor to be a part of the Democracy Group. That's a network of podcasts that examines what's broken in our democracy and how we can work together to fix it. Right at the top, I usually don't do this. I usually roll right into the conversation, but I do want to say we've been having some great conversations over on Substack. I've been writing over there, and I don't know. I should have said, hey, don't tell Elon or Zuck, but that is definitely my favorite platform right now. But it's just because of the way people engage and some of the writing that goes on over there. So check it out. It's easy to find me. It's Corey S. Nathan at Corey S as in Sam Nathan, CoreySNathan.substack.com. Yeah, check it out. Get involved in the conversation. And now let's get right to it. I am so happy to be joined today by LB Prevette. Laura Beth LB Prevette is a rural rejuvenator. I love that. LB creates safe and inclusive spaces for minority and LGBTQ plus youth in Appalachia. And this is actually the first of an ongoing series we'll be doing to highlight weavers. Weave, the social fabric project, tackles the problem of broken social trust that has left Americans divided, lonely, and in social gridlock. Weaves connects, supports, and invests in local leaders stepping up to weave a new, inclusive social fabric where they live. And I am so glad to have LB join us today to kick this whole thing off to tell us more about it. LB, thanks so much for taking the time. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. Even though, Corey, I do have to say, like off the bat, we say it Appalachia. Uh,
Appalachia.
Appalachia, where if you get it wrong, we throw an Appalachia. And how we'll get folks to remember. And it's so funny, because I know we were talking about even before this, where you had said, like, do you go by LB? And then when you introduced us like Laura Beth, which I go by my full name, like I never have an issue. But the LB nickname started sticking in college because people would say Laura, and back home we pronounce it Lara.
Laura.
And so it's like Lara or like Laura Beth. And then when people would call me Laura, I was like, you could just go by LB. So it's part of the like lore behind it there, just how much the accent, I guess, dictates. But
I
no,
love
yeah.
that. So I'm learning something as we go. I found out there's all kinds of words that I say kind of funny, like tournament
Oh,
instead.
sorry.
Is
My
that your pop?
That's Frank. Sorry. Yeah. Come here, bud.
All right, come on, let's have a conversation. What's the dog's name?
Frank, come here, buddy. He's a golden doodle, but I did thrift him. I always feel the need to say that when people meet him. I'm like, he came secondhand to me. But I actually have two. I have Franklin and Eleanor, my Roosevelt. She she's a mix of a lot of stuff, and she runs the show, but everybody loves and knows him. So, they play their parts well.
All
Uh,
right.
yeah.
Well, we're learning all kinds of stuff. We're learning about the Roosevelts. We're learning about Appalachia and Laura as opposed to Laura. Laura,
Yep.
wait, help me say it.
Laura.
Laura.
Laura. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, there's all kinds of words I'm getting wrong. Tournament versus tournament. I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff I get wrong, but I appreciate
Really,
you.
my entire life is getting words wrong, and like especially I think if you were a well-read kid in a rural area, like I had never heard those words said like out loud, but I
Yeah.
would use them like in my vocabulary. I just was making it up as I went. I was like 28 or 29 when I heard my boss, I was working at Lowe's companies at the time, say that something was to like assuage, like, she didn't want to assuage somebody. And I was like, Swage, what does that mean? I was like, it sounds like the word assuage. Because in my head, for some reason, when I first read it, I was like, well, it's got an AU, looks like sausage. None of this is true. But I would like tell people, like, well, I don't just want to assuage a customer and just say it. And no one corrects me because you're using it like, and again, this rural, who's heard it
Right.
said correctly. And it took a boss from New York that was down. And the first time she said assuage, I was like, I think I've been misusing that word for the past 20 years. My bad. So yeah.
So I told you my wife's from Alabama. What a treat. I wish I had a recorder going the first time that she was in the kitchen with my dad, New York Jew that he is. And she's like, Ronnie, could you get the oil? Where's the oil? He's like,
Oh
what?
yeah.
What did you say? And then my mother could, Lisa, say, oi, yo. And like the conversation between the Jews from New York and the girl from Alabama. Man, I
Oh
could write a
yeah.
whole play about that alone.
Absolutely.
Put up the
Yeah, that
sack and
we just don't see it. Full soul,
yeah.
old. no.
Put up the sack in the buggy at the Piggly Wiggly. Um, anyway, all right. The other thing I needed to ask you about at the top, I forgot where I saw it, but you were described at one point as an aggressive friend. Should I be worried or
No,
what's?
so it is so funny. So that had been something I actually put because it's a wild story like where you talk about it's always weird being invited to do things like
Yeah.
this. To me, it's still kind of like, I mean, sure, I'm really happy to, but it's always like odd. And the first time someone had ever invited me to do like a speaking event like this was with David. Brooks, and it was at the Getty. But it was called A Day of Unreasonable Conversation. It was absolutely insane. Especially for me showing up as my first ever event. But that was my tagline where they were like, we need like a bio at the bottom. And I put like aggressive friend and doting dog mom. And since then, David has written about aggressive friendship. And it's funny because I've seen people take him to task about like introverts, like he wants an attack on introverts. I was like, no, no, no. I just mean like I'm going to aggressively like check in on you and like send you a text or like ask you if you want to get coffee. I don't mean you can't say no. So I'm just aggressively friendly, I guess, maybe. But
All
yeah.
right. Proactively friendly. I don't know, something along
Yes.
those lines. I could see that
Yeah.
though. So
It is kind of aggressive though. I've got a lot of personality, so like I get it.
own it.
Um,
Own it. It's good. It's all right. So I'm glad we started this way because one of the serious things I wanted to talk to you about, um, learning about your background, I sensed a very deep rootedness or a deep connection with where you're from, where your family is from. I got a little bit about your family history, but I also gleaned that there was ambivalence, at least initially, that led you away from, as you call it, the chicken farm in the middle of nowhere. I'd love for you to share. First of all, do I have that right? That kind of, and
yeah.
yeah. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit more about where you're from.
Yeah. So I'm from a place called Wilkes County in North Carolina. And where I'm from is actually on the county line. So we lived in a part of the town called Union Grove that straddled like the county line. So it's funny when folks come to Wilkesboro, the town of 3,000, and they're like, this doesn't seem as small. It's like, yeah, this was like 20 minutes from home growing up. Like this was, getting into town.
Yeah.
Um, and growing up, yeah, I really felt an ambivalence. But again, I think when now like thinking about things through that lens of like rural kids, like what rural isolation means, especially in the era before the internet, right? Of I had an ambivalence because you only saw everywhere else represented. So if I saw an adult on TV, someone successful, someone like doing anything, they were out. Like they were in a city. Like we didn't talk about places like this. So how could you ever imagine a future in this place when you've never seen it? When there was no access to it other than the lived experience I saw. But especially if you're a brat kid, you're always supposed to do something better than this. Like you're
Mm,
supposed to get out and be something different. And I never saw somebody doing something different here. They were all farmers or a beautician or a logger, those jobs that very much when someone tells you what they do, you know exactly what it is. Versus me trying to explain to my grandmother being a learning and organizational development consultant. She's like, I have no idea. When she says she cuts hair, we knew what Granny did.
yeah.
And so I think that ambivalence comes from ambition, right? Like if I had ambition for something else, I couldn't be here. So they felt like really married ideas. Um, so yeah, I think like I very much grew up taking it for granted because I just knew I was supposed to do something else, right? Like my dad would always say, like I was supposed to do something bigger than this or smarter than this, and you couldn't do those things here. Those were incompatible. So I think I just never even considered the idea that it would be my home once I was grown, like
That's
once I
interesting
an
because
adult.
it would be ignorant to assume that folks from that happen to be born in a certain county or any number of areas that are less densely populated. Well, there's clearly no smart people there. There's clearly no creative people. Well, of course there are, right?
Yeah.
But with
Well,
the way I'm thinking of it now is that, well, what about applying that intelligence, applying that creativity, applying all those virtues that any one of us human beings might have, but the canvas happens to be different. Like as
yeah.
if Wilkes County or how'd you say it? Wilkes? I'm trying to get
Well,
it right. Wilkes
yeah.
County couldn't possibly be the canvas to apply all of those virtues to.
Well, yeah, and it becomes like, I mean, I think the most creative folks I know that I've ever met in my life are from here and live
Mm,
here. Some of the most talented, brilliant folks. But, think about yourself. Like, what's a TV show about rural communities?
I don't know. The closest you can get are some of those like Hallmark movies or something like that.
Yeah. But like, there's no like, what's a great movie about like small town? Like, when have you seen a show? When have you seen it represented for us to even feel valid and expressing creativity in these
Old
places?
shows like The Waltons or something like that. I
Yeah.
don't
I
know.
mean, Mayberry's just up the road. Andy Griffith is a local,
Oh
of,
wow.
he's from, yeah, his actual hometown's, just up the road. But yeah, it's like not a thing we see, you know what I mean, on
Yeah.
the media. Like I even think about, I love Schitt's Creek and it took me forever to watch it because I was like, I don't want to watch a show about rich people coming to the South. And finally, one of my friends who also works in rural areas like, no, you should watch it. It's good. Um, yeah, but there's not positive representation of these areas, and then we wonder why people keep leaving them or why
Yeah.
they don't see their future in these places when they're just consistently like bastardized in the media. Um, as the, kind of nest of all the sins right now in America come from these small towns.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah. And then your experience growing up, I did read some stories that it wasn't easy.
Yeah. Like, yeah, it's a weird when I think about growing up. Wasn't easy for a lot of ways. And then in a lot of ways, it was so good. Like I
Mm,
still think about earlier this year, my grandfather had passed. And so I was spending a way more time back, before and after his passing. I was spending way more time back in the area where I grew up. And I just really do love those folks. Like it's kind of came full circle of like, I don't know how to explain. Like they were always really good to me in the reality, in the person. Like I actually think about the youth group I grew up in that church in that area. Like it's really funny when other people talk about their youth group and games and stuff. And I was like, well, we did that, but we also did like a lot of like cutting our neighbors' yards or splitting wood for elder. Like we were like doing community work. Like it was so intertwined. And it wasn't easy both because like I was always different because I was queer. I'm a little, I'd moved through the world just differently and always have. But also
how
went to,
sorry to interrupt, but how young were you when you started to become aware of that?
my gosh, like forever, dude. Like I remember like, and it's so funny now, like thinking about how much like heteronormativity like create like where we wonder why people come out later things. I remember being like a kid and like, oh my gosh, she is so pretty. Why doesn't she have a boyfriend? If I were a boy, I would be her boyfriend. And it's like constantly, like that's always been where I was like, ah, but it never crosses my mind. Do you know what I mean? That it's like, oh, you could be the girlfriend until I was much older. Like I didn't know about like lesbians or gay people. And I was like, oh, that makes way more sense. Like for sure. Like that hits like that. Okay, cool, cool, cool. That feels familiar. So yeah, like I mean, it's just always been like a part of my life, I guess. Yeah. It's
So
also a
in
joy of I have the theory of like it's a joy of being like a very tall and broad woman, like I always have been. So I think I wasn't pursued. Like I think so often, especially like young girls, they're constantly pursued by men, right? Like you have a million suitors and your job is to turn them down and pick one boyfriend. But what happens if you're someone like me and you're never pursued at that age and you get to think about, well, what do I want in a partner? Like, what do I actually want? And I think it's why we see so many late in life lesbians because they've spent their entire life deflecting. They've never got to sit and think, well, what do I want if I could pursue for myself? So I think I was really privileged to not have to wade through that and be able to have really clear thought of my own partner while not having to wait off teenage boys the whole time.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in the day-to-day stuff, kind of like you're describing, mowing the lawn and splitting
Yeah.
wood and going shopping and bringing food to somebody, that it's not something that's like front of mind.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just, and I think that's where I say, like, I think it was a lot of the queerness, but so much of it was just a stature. Because the other two girls in my youth group who are kind, loving, I adore them. They both look just like Barbie and are blonde and could sing like an angel. And then I was Randy Travis with a bass line. And it was like just the three of us. So I think a lot of it, had nothing to do with my queerness, but then like everything to do with that queerness. You know what I mean? Kind of like all in one. And I think it was so much of it was the fear to face it that made me feel othered.
Mm,
Like, I didn't know how they would treat me. I knew how they spoke about queer people.
right.
I didn't know how you would treat me. I didn't know. if you would be okay with me, if you would learn to love me, but I knew how you felt about other queer people. I watched how you spoke about them. I watched what you said about them, and it made me other myself
Mm,
out of the fear of the othering that would come. If I just retreat and then let myself be less known,
yeah,
I don't have to deal with the fact that they might stop loving me.
right.
Yeah.
So to this day, are there folks in your town, whether it's elected officials, faith leaders, or other folks in the community that are specifically belligerent because of your identity? Or
To me as a person, no. Do you know what I mean? Like it's been a very long time since I've had that concern. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
I think, yeah, like on social media, my definition of belligerent, yeah, I think you're violently transphobic and you're spewing things that hurt and harm my siblings and my friends. I think you are out here perpetuating ideas that if you sit and pick at them a little bit are like really misogynistic and really homophobic and really are going to lead to a lot of harm and pain. I think that's belligerent. Um, when I would have a social media, like, well, yeah, we have elected officials in town that I would comment and do like, I'd love to get a coffee. And publicly, they'll be like, yeah, let's sit down anytime.
yeah.
And then when you keep sending follow-up messages, they just ignore you and they never get that coffee. But publicly, oh, yeah, I'll sit and talk to you about it. And I was like, bet, let's go. So yes and no. Like we do house like Samaritan's Purse, which, does a lot of great work in disaster relief and thinking about Helene. It also has Franklin Graham's philosophy, which is really harmful for all of my queer siblings, neighbors, and friends. Um, so,
Do
yeah,
you get do you
like
get
embedded in it.
pushback from folks from the LGBTQ community for maybe doing a project with Samaritan's Purse?
I personally don't, but mainly it's because of I don't work with Samaritan's Purse directly, mainly because of the type of pledges and training, you know what I mean, that are required with a lot of their volunteering. Like, I would be lying to say, like, yes, I believe these things. Part of their employment policy is like a pledge of their like faith-based things, which would essentially me say, like, I don't have rights as a human. So I don't do personal work with them, but it's their exclusion, right? That I would have to lie to work for you, and I don't want to lie. I think they do great work,
Yeah,
again, in disaster relief, but those relationships are ones I don't have, but they're not my lack of I would work with them.
right, right.
Um,
Yeah,
Now, as far as other like questionable, I guess folks would say relationships or like being comfortable with folks that hold really different values, yeah, I think I get pushback for sure from other queer communities, but I think that's like there's builders and bulldozers and you each need each other. Like someone's got to be willing to like say the incredibly like blunt, direct, like I gotta say it. Um, and someone's got to be able to like hold space for other people's learning.
mm,
Like you need like people defending these real truths, and you need people who have the thick enough skin to hear other people's growing pains to get there.
yeah, yeah. How did you learn that? How did you develop that ability to hear that way?
Uh, I grew up where I did. No, I think so much of it really is like um uh it's an active thing, like actively, like as I've been an adult and weirdly in corporate America of like defensive listening. And before that, customer service, like you want to learn how to listen and not react, go talk to any server ever.
Mm,
Go talk to anyone who's handled drunks at 1 a.m. You go talk to any of those folks. You go talk to like that single mom waiting tables at an IHOP. She will teach you how to listen without getting offended.
mm,
Like, and those were the type of jobs like I had had prior to that. So it was just like, yeah, I've really gotten used to dealing with people where I would love to respond, but I really need my paycheck, so I'm not going to. So yeah,
that's interesting. I was curious what you, because I think you worked at Lowe's for like 7 years. Is that right?
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
I was curious what you learned, like what you learned there and how you're applying all that you learned to all that you're doing now.
Oh yeah, man. I think like because prior to Lowe's, I worked at I had been like a fry chef on our marina that floats on the lake when I was in high school, like, and then had always worked in like food service, like random, like I'll work at gas station grill. I'd worked at IHOP for years, and then at Starbucks, and then Lowe's. So it was kind of like I'd always done service work. And I came into Lowe's as a call center agent on customer care, like on the phone lines. Um, and I moved from that working in learning and development and started as a facilitator. So helping like train new hire classes, going through those programs. The foundation, like customer service skills are what I think is so shocking and is true of every company that we like teach and drill in and really invest in with frontline employees. And then we don't put our directors through it
Mm,
and our VPs. And I was like, you guys also need to learn how to do this, how to listen non-defensively when someone's upset. How do you de-escalate a situation? And it is like a series of behaviors. And what's so funny in a call center class, when I'm teaching those things, I'm really giving language to skills most of these people already had because
hmm.
they're coming from frontline customer service work. So for them, they know how to do it. They're just learning the language of what it means.
Right.
And then when I now teach like a variation of that around like nonprofit, community listening, or like leadership skills, and it's like mind blowing to people.
Yeah.
And I find it startling that like we put more investment in making a call center agent at Lowe's be more empathetic than your nonprofit director.
So I have to ask you, I didn't expect to go here, but real quickly, I'll share an incident with you. Um, Over the last few months, I thought that I was old enough, mature enough, mentally healthy enough for certain incidents not to happen. But because I do what I do, I'm constantly in the fire. I put myself out there because I want to solve this. These issues are important to me. Politics and religion are important to me. I want to talk about it. But the biggest issue for me isn't one particular issue. It's the fact that we don't know how to talk to each other.
Yeah.
But the part of the problem is that because I do this program, a lot of folks, I, I, I kind of become a target practice for a lot of folks. They want, I'll show you, we can't talk about it, you know? So, but the other problem is that I think folks think that I'm like the expert and I'm not. I'm like the number one patient that needs the most help. So anyway, I had an incident just Saturday night, actually, where it went all the wrong ways. And I ended up just losing my shit, just like completely, just like, and that was one thing. But for me, that like, it doesn't just happen and it's over. It's something that stays with me for days and sometimes weeks. It's like scar, like not just scars,
Yeah.
but like bruises I got to recover from, you know? So when somebody is coming and doing all the things that just like trigger, what are some of the things that you do? Are there tools or mindsets that you get into so that when they're labeling you a certain way in a pejorative way, and then they're cutting you off, and then they're doing all those things that, in my case, trigger me? Like, what are some of those tools that you have?
Yeah. So like, I love that you said like you need the help the most. I feel like I've learned all these things because I need it. And it's like still very much an active student and practicing it, because I feel triggered all the time. I flipped, where you're back to that lizard brain just
Yeah.
running on wild. It happens. I feel it often, and I'm also often like I misspeak. I speak out of, we all often do that. For me, it's like if I'm gonna have a hard conversation with someone, I need to remember like the first rule is like, is this a good faith conversation?
Mm,
Right? Like
yes.
if it's not a good faith conversation, I don't argue with the devil and his advocate. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Let me pause you right there. I think that's a really good rule of thumb. And 99% of the time, I see it, I smell it from far away,
yeah,
and I avoid it. But in this instance, it
I
was a
got you.
bad faith conversation with somebody that I love, somebody
Mm,
that I've had like a long, deep, meaningful relationship with, a good pal. So
yeah,
we've had bad faith conversations before,
yeah,
but I thought we were past it, and I thought I was past having it affect me to that degree. You
yeah.
know?
And I think for me, something that has been useful that I wish I've deployed more often, but I'm always glad when I remember when I feel that of like I'm emotional, right? Like my emotional side is in control. I'm flipped. Um, is just asking them like, is there, depending on the conversation, but like what evidence would like open your mind to this? Like what evidence would open your mind? What proof would it take? And if they don't have an answer, we're not in a good faith conversation. Like
Mm,
there's no sense in me talking to you anymore if there's no nothing I can say is going to change your mind. I don't, okay, like if there ever is something, I'd love to talk to you about that idea.
Right. That's a good point because then you're removing the emotional or the spiritual or even the philosophical, and you're just saying, okay, can we just agree that gravity exists? Is there
Yeah,
something
totally.
empirical that we can
Yeah.
both hold on to as a common mooring? Yeah,
Yeah.
that
That's
makes sense.
that's a one of the OG like de-escalation skills in call center agents of get back to data. Like when people are heated, ask them to confirm their address, their phone number. I
Mm,
want to read this story back and you tell me that it's true. Like you start getting into facts and figures and things that aren't emotionally driven.
yeah,
But the way I kind of think about that in like hard, like social and community conversations, like, okay, do we have any data to come back to? Or is this just an emotional conversation?
yeah, yeah.
Like, is there any empirical evidence we can agree on? And if not, this isn't going to get de-escalated.
Right,
And at that
right.
point, it's kind of like I can step back and be like, oh, okay, this isn't about me and the conversation we're having. This is someone with a lot of emotions at a table, and I
Yeah.
don't need to have mine too. Like, we're not in a good fate spot anymore.
I want to get back to your story because there's some really interesting pivot points
Yeah.
in your story. What initially, if you want to share this, what initially prompted you to leave the first time, but then what prompted you to come back?
Yeah, so it's a like, yeah, it's definitely the yo-yo of like, I don't know if you remember those like yo-yo balls that
Yeah,
they used
yeah,
to.
sure.
I love those. I feel like that with Wilkes County often. Yeah, like the there was never a time where I really considered that I wasn't gonna leave Wilkes County,
Mm,
right? Like, I mean, smart kids, you're gonna get out, period, right? Like, that's just the expectation. Especially from a rural town, you're gonna go to college and be a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher, an architect, like the only jobs we know exist. Um, and so yeah, I knew that was gonna happen. Like that was always kind of the plan. But I really did like love my home. Like I've always loved like the land here. I love like the community, and it feels like often because it is like I'm an outside watcher of it, like an observer of the place, and I've just really loved, being here and honestly like really scared to think about leaving. I had played like travel softball, so occasionally we're sleeping at a night's inn, maybe for an overnight tournament for like a season or two, and we'd go to Winston-Salem for Haynes Mall at Christmas a couple times, but I'd never really left like the town. Like I'd never really been away to see anything else. Um, but then when I was in high school, there was a night where there was I had suffered like a pretty violent attack, like where we were all at a bonfire out in the woods. I was going back to grab a jacket, and the next thing I know is like I hear someone calling me like a fucking dyke and a branch, and that was the like holy shit, because it was just a like complete rug out from under. Like I'd never felt unsafe in that
mm,
way. I may have felt unloved. I may have felt othered. I never felt fear.
mm,
I never felt like I felt like, yeah, fear about losing their love, fear about rejection, but not that like physical feeling. And it's still something that like I wrestle with in this place really hard. It's still a like thing I wrestle with, not because I think it's valid or I've seen any reason to. It just lives in your bones. You know what I mean? After that. And in the immediate aftermath, it was just such a like violent whiplash because I'd had friends who like knew I was queer in high school, like it was like shitty because kids are shitty to anyone
yeah.
different in high school, but it wasn't like that. I didn't think it was that bad. You know what I mean? Like, and after that, I really just kind of shut down and was just counting down to leave town because I didn't know who to tell. Like, who do you tell? Like, who knew? Who's in on it? What happens if I tell my dad? And what happens when I tell my whole family who maybe didn't want me to be queer because they were worried it was unsafe? What do I tell them now? Like how, and I was like, well, yeah, it's unsafe, but that has nothing to do with my queerness. That has to do with their hatred. But like, I didn't have that language then or
Mm,
that processing power. Um, and so that was I'm ready to go away. And I left. That was in the spring, and I left that into summer for college. I went to Wingate University, which is just outside Charlotte, so about 2 hours southeast of where I am. I loved Wingate. I still have wonderful friends from there that we have an annual sleepover still at the house. Like just some of the coolest people that I really adore. It was a really lovely place for a kid. I think from a town my size and my type of experience, like a 1,400 person school at that time. Um, and everyone, like, it's private schools, everyone lives on campus all 4 years, which I think now is awesome. Like the type of community, really enjoyed it. And then in my sophomore year, I'd left Wingate. My father had passed on sudden heart attack
Oh, wow.
on a chicken farm. So, and then I was back home at the farm, which was really just like terrible. Like the farm, yeah, it's like an old farmhouse and not in the quaint way, like not in the like picturesque way, in the
Yeah.
like 8 foot ceilings, dark house, it's always cold type way. And it was one thing when dad was alive, but it was really different being there alone, especially being there from living on a dorm and living in an apartment with my friends and
Right.
living like to suddenly like, oh, I don't have cell service. Like
Yeah.
there's not TV or internet or cell, you're just like
And were
back
you
to that.
immediately having to take care of things? There were like 30,000 chickens or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, it was actually he had passed during cleanouts. That's what I was heading home for that day when I pulled in the drive, which is when after the birds are removed from that flock and and the guys come scrape all the litter out, then you like take the houses apart, pressure wash everything and put them back together. And cleanouts still had to happen. So yeah, there was like a day shock period, and then it was like, well, we still have to get this done. And dad was the expert in how to get all that done, of like what it takes to
Yeah.
do. And he actually like in a great way, but to a point I like still am like, damn, what an idiot. He really wanted to shelter my brother and I from so much of the farm where we were extra hands, but he didn't want us learning that stuff. Like he didn't want us doing it and like engage deeply. We were his hands, but then when he was gone, we're like, whoa shit, like, do we know how to think about this? Do we know what we're doing? And my stepmom, he and her had actually only been married 7 days. It's wild. Before he had died. They'd been together for like a few years, but
Yeah.
like they just gotten married finally. And she had a lot more like of that day-to-day insight. But yeah, just kind of everyone immediately right back at it. Yeah.
Right. Right. I did read an account where in the mourning of your father, you realized people still cared about you on a very basic level.
Yeah, it was it's still one of the like probably most profound like experiences I've had of and especially where I talk about that self-othering we do, right?
Yeah.
Especially like in the wake of the attack and all week I was always different. I deeply pulled back. Like I threw myself into my new lives. That summer before I lost my dad, I had been living up in Pennsylvania working as a camp counselor because I didn't want to come home. Like I wanted, and now I give anything in the world to have been home that summer, But I was like self-pulling back from that community. And like at this point, like everyone knows I'm gay, whether or not I told them. There's only so long, we haven't met in person, but like, yeah, I'm 100 footer. Like you can call it. If people don't realize I'm gay, I'm like, have you met a gay person? Like, all right. But uh
I got to tell you, there's a conversation we had with my oldest kids, one of her dear friends or their dear friends, and they were about 18, and we knew the kid was gay since he was about 3 years old, and it was just such a big thing, such a big burden when he was about 18 or 19. He came to us and just said he kind of came out with it, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a little overweight, so what, okay, what do we got? It's
it
like,
is It is so hard to think of a line because I think about this even with kids I see and their parents I talk to where their kids are like they're like we know they're gay or we know like but we don't know because how do you know like no you know what I mean but like we have a feeling uh and it's like yeah how do you address that because like you don't want your kid carrying around this burden or your friends' kids carrying around this burden when you don't care
yeah,
but you also don't want to like out them and be wrong like because you people can be anyway.
that's a good
That's where
point.
it's
Yeah,
where I always
because
tell them, I was like, just be like, just for the record, if anyone at this table, like, just for the record, just saying I would love any of my kids that were, be they queer, straight, trans, whatever,
yeah,
but it's a really weird line to walk. But
yeah,
yeah, I feel so bad when parents or my, people that I know of, my friends that are parents, when their kids finally come out to them and they're like, the kid was just like crying and so relieved. And I'm like, man, buddy, your parents never cared. Like nobody,
yeah.
but you don't know it. You don't know how to tell them. Yeah, it's a weird
But
line.
but I understood why it was so torturous at times because
Yeah.
we the first I became a Christian in my late 20s, and we went to this really fundamentalist church the first 10, 15 years. Our kids were going to a Christian school that might as well just been called, like nowadays they might have just call it the MAGA school. It's just like
Yeah.
it's not just Christian, it's just like a certain socio-political thing.
Yeah.
So but we and I got to admit, when our oldest was first having these conversations and expressing what they were struggling with out loud, we did not handle it well. We like
Yeah.
all the things to say, to not say, like, oh no, that's just in your head. That's just a fad. Like all
Yeah.
the worst things you could possibly say that is what but like it forced us to really reckon with, okay, how do we love our kid well?
Yeah.
Regardless of you
Yeah.
know what questions we have or what wishes we had or whatever, like what concerns we had, because Lisa's I don't know if I should talk, well, I I'll say this, that Lisa's concern was that if any of our kids identified differently, then they would put themselves in harm's way. It
Hmm.
wasn't about like she had Lisa had like, or I
Yeah.
had like a vision for them. That's not
Mhm.
what we want to impose on our kids, but I think she was worried about their safety. That's what it came down to.
And I think that is a huge driver for so many parents, is the safety,
Yeah.
right? And back to the like, if we worry that our queer kid wouldn't be safe, it's not about our kid not being a queer, it's about the world being safer for queer people.
Mm,
Um, and when we look at the suicide rates for queer youth and trans youth, and already how magnified that is, and then
yeah.
when you look at the insane jump, depending on whether or not your family rejects you or accepts you, it's like, I don't want to misquote the data from the Trevor Project, but I'm pretty sure it's like a 7-time jump of whether or not your family rejects you, to where it's like the real harm that we do is not embracing and loving them. The
Mm,
real, like, the biggest harm is that. And if we're worried about their safety in the world, we need to make the world kinder, not our kids straighter, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah. Amen to that. There was something that you said that kind of gripped me. You won't hurt alone. You know
Yeah.
what I'm referring to?
Yeah.
Could
Yeah.
you,
I've
could
like,
you, yeah.
yeah, that's when I think about, because again, I don't have any formal or like big grandstanding thing in town, but I am most proud of when people are hurt or low, they call me. And it's because, like, again, like we were saying, like the world is scary, and I can't tell you that something bad won't happen to you. Like, I can't tell that to anybody. Like, we can't say that to any of our friends. But what I can say is that pit, when something is bad has happened and you don't know what to do with it, you don't have to go through that alone. That is the real, when I think about dark place and pain, like that's what it really was. It wasn't that someone hurt me. It was that I just kind of held it and just sat there holding it. You know what I mean? And didn't have anywhere to go with it or ask for it or lean on it. And that like solitude, that's the real like that was the big wound. That's the big, big wound that it left. And that's the thing of like you won't hurt alone. Like bad things are going to happen. People are going to have breakups and they're going to have death and they're going to have loss. And like maybe they would experience violence. You don't have to do it alone. That's the only way those things are survivable.
Yeah. There's a scholar that I know David has quoted quite a bit, Heschel, and he talks about the profund. For some reason, I'm talking about this concept a lot this week, the profundity in the mundane. So a lot of times when we're thinking about community organization and not charitable work and that kind of, we're thinking about big buildings being built and somebody's name on the
Yeah.
door and getting an award and but you're weaving has a lot to do with the profundity in the mundane.
Yeah.
Mowing somebody's lawn or putting a reading group together, putting a mountain bike club together. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about the Wilkes County. Well, first of all, what would you call a weaver? How would you define that? And then let's get into, kind of what's happening in Wilkes County.
Yeah. So, weavers, like, how would I define a weaver? I just think of them as like your good neighbors, the neighbors that even if they can't help you, they know who can help you. Those like Rolodex people, who both know and take action, right? If I can't do it, I know somebody else who can come to you. So they're kind of the like Yeah, just that thread that kind of pulls through of knowing how to connect things within a community. Um, and then, yeah, the Weave project through the Aspen Institute has had a arm here in Wilkes County the past 2 years with the Weaver Awards. So we've been involved with the Weave program since 2018, since when we first, Wilkes County and David and the original Weave crew all kind of first met. And these past 2 years, they've done the Weaver Awards, which has been really amazing. As someone, like you said, where I am not a organization or a nonprofit or any of those things, I'm just a neighbor who loves the mundane. But what the Weaver Awards did is it brought funding to reward that mundane. So that mundane good. So the way the awards program was set up is we had a local advisory board of paid members to compensate time. So we could have folks from across groups, to come in here, not just those who had the time to donate. Review applications. We made the application process super simple. It was 4 questions. You could do a video proposal. And this application was open to anyone. You didn't have to be a 501c3. It could be anyone in the community who just had an idea of how we could better connect. And this advisory board reviewed it, and those became the Weaver Awards. Small awards, 2,500 to 5,000, depending on the initiative. But the thing that comes out of the Weaver Awards is creativity of things. I think often, like especially in like the way donors approach funding, they want proven results. I want my money to give me something tangible. But then the Weaver Awards wind up with like Takiva Catherine, Kia, one of our assistant principals, starting to pay for physicals for students.
Yeah.
It's required. You cannot try out for a sport at all until you've had your physical. And that
Right.
costs, I know when I was in school, it was $75 a person. That was a big deal for my parents when it was school ball physical time. Um, what if those are paid for? And what if those kids go to practice? And what if those kids get gear? And then what happens to their scores? And we know what happens. The more connected and engaged people feel, the more they thrive in all aspects of their lives. And it just kind of created this open door, yeah, to like the homeschooling group having like ways for like having youth meetup and regular like enrichment and engagement activities and having, like the mountain bike rides and sponsoring things that folks wouldn't normally think of, but create community in a way. Um, versus trying to solve the problem, we're just trying to engage the problem solvers.
Yeah, there were a few that caught my eye. The inclusive playground,
Yeah.
the touch a truck event.
Yeah.
there's, there's some really creative.
Well,
Uh,
and something like the Touch a Truck event does so much, right? Because it's like we're doing this great event of Touch a Truck. Bring in kids, let them get familiar with all these big, what kid doesn't love the giant
yeah,
horns and lights on all the emergency vehicles? But then it gets all of those emergency responders gathered, right? And then you get people who are part of the Weavers that also are part of the recovery revolution, becoming a lot closer with our EMS and our
mm,
first responsive staff. And what does that do down the road? What does this like? Those people you met at this event become your committee member later down the road, and what kind of connections come from it, where it's not just that the touch a truck's wonderful and then parents come out and kids have a good time and get to connect with all of our emergency and first responder folks, but then what happens after that? How does it keep continuing?
yeah,
That's what I think is the real magic of Weave.
yeah. Also, I mean, some other things like small business funding, networking and support. It got me thinking. Merle's. I was looking at pictures of Merle's. I got to come visit.
It's a
That is so.
beautiful, beautiful bar. Yeah, we're quite proud.
Well, the bar is beautiful, but I was also fascinated by the history of the building itself. Could you share a little
Yeah.
bit about that?
Yeah, so the building's an 1871 cottage on Main Street. And so it was originally like known as like the Coles Law Office, like back downtown. And then there was a period after that where it was like the bridal cottage because the courthouse is right next door. So
Oh,
the rural folks that would come get married, that was like the honeymoon kind of house.
okay.
And folks called it the Law and Bride Cottage for years. But then Erin Vanderplug, whose husband are the co-owners with me in Merle's, her grandmother actually grew up in it as a house.
Oh,
So it was
wow.
actually the home her grandmother lived in. Mim's still around, like Mim's a regular with her ladies in the wine club. And so that's like, especially with Erin. and her drive behind Merle's being about the preservation of a building. And we joke that what we thought was going to be a remodeling very quickly became preservation. We were like, wow, this is way more expensive than we thought. Um, and it was something I think also when we think about like community and for lack of a better term, good or bad, gentrifying like a mountain town, like it was watching her grandmother go through her childhood home being transformed, and
Mm,
like witnessing it. And I remember when we were doing a porch rail and how it like that like got mem, like the porch rail. And then we were redoing it exactly as it was, but for some reason that coming down and up. But what a blessing it is when our past and local folks are helping steward in the future, right?
yeah.
Like it's not folks coming in and taking over. It's a very like with your permission and with you every step of the way and wanting to. And I just think about that as like when we think about building in these small towns and rural areas, like what it should look like. Because I couldn't imagine what that have felt like if she just sold it and someone had done that.
Yeah.
If it weren't her grandkids and, the folks that she was close to.
That makes sense because it is faithful to not just the place and the building, but the people.
Mhm.
So the other thing that was remarkable to me in looking at pictures and reading some stories is that it's not just a bar, but it's like a meeting place. A place that people throughout the community can get together for all different. Yeah, it
Yeah.
should grab a drink, but for all different kinds of different get-togethers.
Yeah, it's definitely been that's I jokingly call it a, community center that sells drinks to keep the lights on.
That's a
Which
good.
I think there's something to be said about trying to do good with the for-profit revenue stream. I mean, look at the Girl Scouts. They have had a product and used it to do great programming for years. And I think yeah, in the design of it, we wanted it to feel like that. Like, of course, the main front room, it feels like a bar, but the rest of it, you're in like a coffee shop, a tea house. There was someone once, it was like the second weekend we were open, and I go and he's like sitting on the floor in the purple room, which is one of our back rooms, because there were just so many folks in there. And he was like, I feel like I'm at like my cool aunt's house party. And I was like, this is the dream. That is the vibe we have hoped you would always have. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, one of the videos I was watching, you were curating a conversation across differences. So I figured I'd ask you. I ask everybody this question. It's the TP&R question. What do you think? And we've kind of been talking about it actually, but what do you think each of us can do to be able to share space with, have better conversations with, and perhaps even nurture relationships with people across our differences? So people who come from different places than we do, have different backgrounds and beliefs than we do, who get their news from different sources than we do. How can we do better at talking politics and religion without killing each other? Or is it even possible?
Yeah, mine is I gotta remember that like I think all people are good if I can go far enough back. Like, and so mine is when people are talking politics or religion and they say things that, what we say, get me flipped or make me want to kill them. There's no way I understood you.
Mm,
I must have misunderstood. I need to ask another question. I need to like
that's
go
good.
farther back of what do you mean by that? No, break it down for me. No, like go farther. Um, yeah,
There's no way I understood you. Let me understand that. That's
yeah.
good. That's good. Because David's most recent book, by the way, which just came out in paperback, from what I understand. But to your point, people want to be seen, people want to be heard, people want to be understood. And then oftentimes we condense maybe one thing that we hear into an entire narrative, as opposed, and then we stop seeing that person as a human being.
Totally.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, this is good. I'm writing this down. um, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. I'm just really curious. My main question is like, how did you meet your wife? Like, that has been the one I think, and because all my questions for you are thinking about that family dynamic, or
Yeah.
like, you talk about her coming to New York. Maybe that's my question. What's it like for you in Alabama? Or do you go to family in that area?
Oh man, so her Granny Mac had she was the oldest of 14 brothers and sisters, and they all just loved me. In fact, Granny asked me to give the eulogy when she passed away, and I'm like, Granny, you ain't dead yet, so. but eventually I did. I was like, man, the Jew from Jersey's giving the eulogy in Alabama. And
It's so
so,
funny.
but
That
it
is
was
so
good.
funny.
I preached on Proverbs 31 because Granny Mac was absolutely a Proverbs 31 woman, a woman of valor, very much like my grandmother. But in Judaism, the expression would be Eshes Chaya, a woman of valor. That's Yiddish. But it's good for me. But I have an expiration date if I'm being completely candid.
Yeah.
Uh, I do enjoy, um, sitting and drinking, sipping on sweet tea and, all and I can't get enough of Cracker Barrel and, all that stuff. But being that like I have a certain inner rhythm. So by the seventh, well, I'm on go. Like by the seventh time somebody
You're
says
like
that,
lead.
I'm going to be in the car. I'm going to listen to sports radio. You guys do your 12 more. Well, I'm fixing to go.
If it makes you feel better, Corey, even as Southerners, we do that too. There was one night where there was like a bonfire, and I had a friend who was like, "All right, guys, I only have 30 more minutes. I'm gonna leave." And we're like, "All right." And then it gets to be like 30 more minutes, and she's like, "All right, I'm gonna head out in a second." And this goes on for like 2 hours. And after she left, we looked at each other. We're like, "Damn, bitch, go on!" Like we did not,
I will say
you know.
the one time I felt really uncomfortable was at a yard burning party. It was out. I didn't know what I was getting into, and there was some talk that I had not been used to. I guess some
Yeah,
folks grew up talking a certain way. Talk about. I'm not going to get into the details, but like othering
yeah,
people,
yeah,
using certain language, but not just the language, but the hate to the point where it was a calloused hate behind it towards certain people. And like, what do I do? Like, do I say something? Like, I, I was frozen. I just didn't know how to behave and engage in that
mhm,
environment. But it was a
yeah.
yard burn. Part of it was just like, you guys are throwing a tire on the fire. I
A
don't.
lot of you're like, I don't, like we always say, like before a hard conversation, do a safety check first. And you're like, I don't really know about this situation. You're
Yeah,
like, "Oh, I'm a white dude, but this feels
yeah.
like I don't know.
That's
It's
an
all
interesting.
good.
Nobody's ever asked me about that, but yeah, I do have a story about how we. But that's for maybe that's for the sitcom that I do write about the how I met her and all that stuff. But
That's a Yeah. No, I haven't had when you think about those situations that like I don't know how to respond in like so long. And I think it's because people in Wilkes are now like way too not maybe not in a bad way, but they're a little more like cautious around what they'd say around me, so I never have to worry about it.
yeah,
But I was like driving through, I was coming back home from Alabama actually, and was driving through like Georgia. I was going through the town of Gay, Georgia. Very misleading. I thought it would be funny to take a photo at the road sign, but then I'd stopped at the gas station. I was like, maybe I don't need to be here because like there is a black woman and the gentleman behind the register was Middle Eastern and they were having an altercation about something. I like walk in late. Like I'm like, I don't really know what's happening and they all seem fine and settle it, whatever, and leave yelling. And I was like, okay, like this, all right, whatever. And there's a kind of a big, white guy in front of me, like a good old boy looks like home in front of me. And he just starts going off about that like N-word bitch to
yeah,
the cashier. And I'm like, and she's already left the building at this time, right? So it's like he waits until she leaves and now
yeah.
he's ready to say it. And I had no clue what to say. And I was just like staring, and he turns to look at me, and I'm just like staring back at him confused because I was like, I don't really know how to engage. Like I'm literally just here for ice and beer. Like I just have a bag in each hand and I don't really know what to say. So I just do the like confused stare, you know. Um and when I get to the car, I was telling my girlfriend at the time, she's like, "Oh, when you're wearing that shirt." And I looked down and I forgotten it's a shirt that has like the silhouette of like a black woman with like a large like natural afro, but it just says like black women are dope. So he just turns and I was like,
That
okay,
said it all for you.
I feel better now. Like I didn't know how to say it. I was like, oh, I forgot I was wearing that shirt. And I was like, never mind. My clothes hopefully like did it for where I was like, I don't think I'm your audience, man. But like, um,
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that. Well, this has been a ton of fun. I want to make sure before we go, how can, if folks wanted to follow you, find more information about Weave, the Weaver Awards, or Burls, and look you up when they're there, how can folks
Yeah,
find you?
absolutely. Weave and the Weaver Awards, there's weavers.org. Especially with the awards right now, we still have time open where they're soliciting 25 new cities for this funding to bring the Weaver Awards to, which is really amazing. There's a lot of information online at the weavers.org about that. Yeah, you can follow me. I'm LB Prevette everywhere except for, no, I think everywhere because I don't really have. I'm bad at social media though, so forgive me if folks are there and following. But yeah,
Well,
it's been really
I'll be
enjoyable.
sure to follow you and look you up, and I'll ping you here and there because I do
Yeah,
get there occasionally. Although I stay pretty close, as you can imagine, to the I-95 or I-85, one way or the other. But I
yeah,
do
I
want to
hear
make
you.
it out there. One time I
You
drove
down
from
77. You can come through the
all
mountainside.
right,
You can come down Fancy Gap. We're not far off.
all right. That'd be good. I did drive one time. I had a thing to do in Nashville. I also had a thing to do in Durham. So I just
Mhm.
drove. That was
You
just
did 40.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it
Uh,
was
you know,
yeah.
half of that was gone with Helene, and still like really in the process where all of I-40 between North Carolina and Tennessee like had been washed out.
Oh wow.
And still, yeah, Helene still got a lot of rebuilding work to be done. But yeah, it's still they had like rebuilt it, then it washed out again.
Oh
Uh,
man,
so yeah, it's been a rough one through there. But it's a beautiful drive up and over the mountains.
it
That
is.
like Nashville over to the Triangle.
Especially
Um,
this time of year. Well,
oh yeah, it's
is it
peak.
slightly early, or are the
Yeah.
leaves changing yet?
Yeah, where we're at, it's really nice where I'm at in Wilkesboro. So we're at like the foothills of the mountains. And then at the higher peaks, I was actually just up at Boone, like up on the top, like up on the mountains earlier this week. And where we had a lot of wind lately, they kind of got robbed of fall. Like they lost a lot of their leaves, but the
Mm,
foothills are just starting to turn, and we've got like dry weather coming. So
all
yeah,
right. Well, I do want to come visit. That's a goal of mine. I do want to come down and visit you. All right. Well, thanks so much for doing this. It's so good to get to know
yeah.
you,
Thank
LB.
you. This was so enjoyable. I really appreciate it. I forgot we were doing a podcast. I was like, I thought we were. I kept waiting for like what we were gonna get to. I was like, oh my gosh, we're doing a podcast. That's what I was meeting him about.
That's what it's supposed to be like.
I was
I
like,
think
oh yeah.
so. I love podcasting, but because podcasting ultimately we're having an intimate, candid conversation. We just happen to be inviting others to participate in the conversation. You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of what it is. So
Yeah.
this was good. This was good. I really appreciate it. I appreciate getting to know you better too, and I hope it's not the last time we hang out.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed it, darling. Thanks so much for having me, sweetheart.
You bet. And as always, if
All
you
right.
dig what we're doing here, remember to follow the show, write the review, check us out on Substack and all the socials. Corey S. Nathan at Corey S. Nathan on all of them. And YouTube too, at Politics and Religion on YouTube. Now go talk some politics and religion with gentleness and respect, and have a great week.